safe to say you and I are both lovers of comics, lovers of the art form?
Yes, we're connoisseurs of the sequential arts.
Yes, and lovers of all its varieties. I can almost say that. Varieties. But I learned something about our friends, the X-Men, this past weekend, Brad, and it has thrown me for a loop. Are you familiar with the character Cyclops, Brad?
Yeah, Cyclops. He had the energy beams that came out of his eyes.
Yes. Okay, Cyclops.
Yeah.
So, now these were all introduced as mutants. They all have powers that are mutations from Homo sapiens. I think they're called Homo superior.
Yes.
Yeah, Homo superioris or whatever they're called in the comic. But do you know, Brad, this is vitally important that you learn this if you don't. Do you know where Cyclops gets his power from? Where his eye beams come from?
Boy, no, I never thought. I just thought his body generated the extra energy.
As did I.
Yeah.
Because that wouldn't make a goddamn lick of sense, Brad.
Yeah.
Except for, apparently, Cyclops' eye beams don't come from this world. They originate from a dimension called the Punch Dimension.
The Punch Dimension.
Which is described as a source of pure, endless concussive force. Now, Brad, I want to ask you, if you asked a 5-year-old boy to write a goddamn comic, would he come up with something like the Punch Dimension?
This entire concept raises so many questions. For example, if the entire dimension is made up of concussive force, how do you know? Because to be concussive, you'd have to have something to concuss.
Right.
And nothing could exist in a concussive dimension. Yeah.
And so in this dimension of constant, non-stopping concussive force, is it movement? Is that the nature of the concussive? Like you said, if there's no object to be concussed, if there's nothing that's sitting still, well, then something in the Punch Dimension is not concussive.
Somebody's not too happy, I'll tell you that.
But also, why?
Yeah.
From a writer's standpoint, why make this so complicated? Then just have it generate from his eyes. Why does it have to be from another dimension?
I'll tell you why. Because it solves the one problem that I've always had with Scott Summers as Cyclops, and that is how does he blink without blowing his eyelids off? Right? It would be impossible.
See, I thought that was the nature of the mutation, that the eyelids were literally mutated to stop whatever that energy force was.
Right. But see, this solves that, because if you have the entry point from the other dimension on the surface of the eye, then the eyelids now are, out of the mechanical part of it. And now that takes care of it, doesn't it? Like if you've got these developing in front of his eye instead of inside the eye, where does that wormhole originate? If it's right in front of his eye, then you don't have to worry about blinking.
Doesn't Scott Summers have a brother who's got a circle thing that comes from his belly or his chest?
Yes.
It's Shockwave is his name? No, what's his name?
I want to say it starts with an M, but anyway, yes.
So now I have to ask, does the whole family have access to the Punch Dimension?
Oh my gosh.
Is that what this is?
And if so, where do their wormholes originate?
Yes, that's what I was going to get at. Is there a cousin? Is there a cousin that they never give burritos to because you don't want to find out where his access to the Punch Dimension is? And on that note, I'm going to say hello, everybody, and welcome to ComicLab, the show about making burritos and comics.
You notice Dave hustled us right into the intro because he did not want to hear my take on that. And making a living from comics, I'm Brad Guigar, the author of the Webcomics Handbook and the creator of Evil Inc.
And I'm his friend Dave Kellett, cartoonist of Drive and Sheldon and creator of the Punch Dimension, I guess. No, I don't know what that. I want to find out who did actually create the Punch Dimension. I'm also the co-director of Strip, but that's an important thing to me is who phoned it in that week with the Punch Dimension.
And the existence of a Punch Dimension implies the existence of a Judy Dimension. And we got to find out what that's all about.
Hell with you. This has been ComicLab. I'm sorry.
And this week's hour of comics advice and critical thinking is made possible by your support at patreon.com/ComicLab. So Dave, let's talk comics.
Let's talk comics, my friend. And you also know, and neither one of us needs to go back and read it, but we know just based on the X-Men that once it was revealed that Scott Summers was accessing the punch dimension, about 10 to 20 episodes on, they had to mentally go into the punch dimension. Xavier had to bring them all into the punch dimension. And then it turns out that there's some kind of lord or baron that rules over the punch dimension. And his name is Sir Punch-a-Lot or something. And he's like, welcome, children, to my punch dimension.
I'd like to know when that came about, because I think that stuff like that happens as a process of like almost the enshittification of comics, where you're so far down the line and so many stories have been told about these characters that you're just grasping at straws. Like, how do you find something new? And it's like, we'll talk about where the I-beams come from. Nobody's ever talked about that before.
Yeah. I mean, was it Kurt Wagner or no, never mind. It was Cyclops' sister, not Cyclops. It was, who was the one that teleported, but she had to go through hell every
Kitty
time she
Pryde,
teleported?
Yeah.
No, it wasn't Katie Pryde. It was the little Russian blonde that was the younger sister of Steel guy. What's his name? Colossus.
Yeah.
Jeez Louise. 14-year-old me is so disappointed.
I'm getting my X-Men confused
Steel guy.
because I knew Kitty Pryde could go through walls. Nightcrawler could bamf from one place to another. But I don't think either one of those are the one you're talking about.
No. Colossus, his sister, could teleport anywhere, but she literally had to go through hell en route to going to where she was going to go.
Wow.
Which is partially, and it is anyway, who cares? But you had mentioned enshittification. I was going to save an update for later on in the show, but I might as well save it or bring it up to the top of the show here because, we have a little bit of news on the enshittification front. Brad, we had a fun year and a half there with Blue Sky, but it looks like the enshittification tables are beginning to turn, Brad.
Really?
A little bit quicker than I anticipated, actually. Because Brad and I said, hey, enjoy it while it's good.
Yes.
This is a platform that right now the links are working. Everybody seems to be okay. The bots are somewhat under control. Everyone seems to be on good behavior, including the company. But news broke this morning, Brad, that the programmer / CEO who had been running the company, Jay Graber, she is stepping down as the head of Blue Sky. And this is coming from Wired Magazine. So a venture capitalist named Tony Schneider will be the interim CEO until a permanent replacement is found. And Tony says, as Blue Sky matures, the company needs a seasoned operator focused on scaling and execution. Jay is saying this. While I return to what I do best, building new things, or as I like to say it in Dave Kellett language, cashing out while my stock options are still great.
Yes. You can't blame her. You can't blame her. I'd probably make the same decision. Get out while the getting's good.
I know. See, here's the thing, Brad, is that if you had built something, let's assume that before it went public, the Twitter folks had been working on Blue Sky probably for 6 months to 18 months, and then another 2 years of working on it. And then, Brad, you suddenly could walk away and have $100 million or $200 million. I see why enshittification happens.
Yes.
But gosh darn it, doesn't it suck that it's going to happen to us the rest of our lives? Every time we get an app or a platform that we love, we can literally start the clock.
Yeah.
And so, okay, granted, as we have said, really from the outset with Blue Sky, we knew this was going to happen and we were all prepared for it.
Yeah.
It's still, though, there's a moment of grieving like in the 5 stages, Brad. And then I guess the next stage after grief is, what will you do anticipating that maybe a year and a half, 2 years from now, you'll have to kind of move on from Blue Sky?
Yeah. Bargaining. I guess bargaining comes next.
Bargaining comes next.
And by the way, I've already, this is fascinating you brought this up, because when you talked about this, I just brought up the story on wired.com. And so I'm scanning as you're talking, and it's like, okay, what are they going to do? Because I'm expecting them to have, pay for promotion and all of that typical stuff that we've seen on every social media platform. You're going to have to they're going to start moving to a more algorithmic dispersal method for your posts. And that means if you want to be seen, you're going to have to start paying them money, and that all of that clawback procedure that Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and the rest have been well down that path. And so I see this sentence, how do they plan to make money? First, quote, subscriptions are the first step, Graeber said, referring to a plan to have users pay a regular fee for the ability to upload higher quality videos, for example, or to access certain customization features. And the first thing I did was I said, well, that's not so bad. I can live with that, right? But that's bargaining.
Yep.
It's like, but you know exactly where all of this is going to lead. You know where all of it goes. And the answer to your question, bargaining. And I've already gone through it.
You went through it very quick. So congratulations on you moved through stage 2 within seconds.
I'm speed running grief over here.
Yeah, you're speed running. So, but here's the thing, though. I don't like of all the terrible options. Subscriptions to me now, I'm emotionally now at a place as an adult where I'm like, you know what? Great. I'm happy to pay a subscription because we've seen what happens when we don't pay, and it becomes Twitter, and it's like, oh, hey, how about 400,000 bots? And a lot of white nationalism. That doesn't sound so great. Let's consider subscriptions, gang, because as we all know, if you're not paying for it, then you are the fee, and maybe this is the only way to do it. I don't know. I don't know anymore. Because no one's coming to save us in terms of a grand, socially underwritten platform. So someone's going to have to pay for it. And I think it might be me as a user. And maybe that's okay if I, as a power user, want to be able to post more or post video or post this or that in order to help underwrite my readers coming to Blue Sky. Maybe that's okay if the subscription is not too bad.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, and I've got to frame this very carefully because this happened at a very specific time. When we were both on Twitter at the time, and Twitter was concerning, saying, hey, if you subscribe as a user, what you just termed a power user, then you could get certain bigger, more abilities, more this and that. And and this was, I think, pre-Elon or just at the very beginning. In other words, Twitter hadn't become what it is now. And I want to make that very clear. But at the time, I said to you, I'd at least try it. I'd at least pay because it was $2, I think. I said I would at least give it a shot for a month and see whether that I get a good return on investment. And I really took some grief from that. Not only got a couple comments online, but got it from at home when my family you wouldn't do that.
You got it from home?
Oh,
Brad,
yes.
There's no place safe. A man can't even walk in and sit on his couch.
No place.
Brad.
But they were like, "Are you serious?" And I'm like, "Yeah, of course. I'd have to try it. Before I just look at it and say, well, no, for $2, I'd have to try it." And that's basically. What you're saying here is that you'd have to try it, especially if you're using it to the degree that you and I are using it, not only for monetization, but for reader retention, audience building, et cetera. I pay $6 a month for a social media scheduler, something that schedules my social media. If I had a Blue Sky subscription that opened up subscriptions in universe for $6, it'd be a push.
Yeah. I also feel like if they had a few key features and in general, I knew that it was keeping ads off the platform and maybe I got access to the punch dimension, then I would subscribe. But yeah, I mean, listen, the older I get, and again, this is me sounding like get off my lawn, but I'm realizing that we have made the world worse by not paying for news and by not paying for social media. Like democracy has not benefited from both of those being free. Like journalism has fallen apart and social media has corrupted us anyway, not to be too horrible. So let me jump us in, Brad, before I start going down the woe is me path.
Man, you really did have a tough night last night, didn't you?
I did. How did you know?
Oh my gosh, I can tell you didn't get a full 8 hours. Let's just put it that way. You're just a little bit less than sunshiny today.
Let's just say old Dave was reading the news at 2 a.m., Brad.
Don't be doing that.
All right, so Brad, this question comes in over at patreon.com/comiclab from our friend Zach Attack. And Zach writes, "Hey, Brad, I'm planning to start a comic, but while I'm still working. So what would you recommend to balance between having a weekly 9-to-5 job and making a comic?" And Brad, this is a question that is among the most asked questions we get, which is work-life balance.
Yeah.
How do we strike a work-life balance? How do we recommend it? How does someone structure it in their own life if they're still working a job, if they're balancing a family, if they're trying to keep their health up, but also staying creative? Brad, what is your big picture recommendations for striking a good work-life balance?
I've got a few thoughts on this. And this is interesting, again, because we get so many questions about it. The first thing I want to say is that neither Dave nor I are going to give you like a breakdown on how your day should be. Like, okay, 9 to 5, you should be at work. From 6 o'clock to 10 o'clock, you should be doing comics. From 10 to 10:15, that's your relationship time. 10:15 to bedtime, none of that. And I wouldn't recommend you take anybody give you.
Wait, how long was relationship time there?
15 minutes for relationship time.
I was gonna say that almost went under the bridge, and I was like, wait a minute, I was doing the math on that. Hold on, how long is relationship time?
You were calculating along, were you? Well, I admit it's a little bit long, but listen, we've got all the bases to cover.
A minute and a half, and then a solid 13 and a half minutes for recovery,
13 and a half
right, Brad?
minutes of groveling, yes.
Groveling and weeping. There we go.
But in general, everybody's life is different. So we're not going to get down to stuff like that. But I'm going to say this. For me, when I think about work-life balance, the main thought that I've got for you is consistency. I want you to find something that you can do consistently week after week. And in other words, I think you get into a lot of trouble, or people get into trouble when they have like they say, oh, I'm going to get a whole bunch of work done. And they put maybe 20 hours into their comic on 1 week. And then the next week, they can't put any hours because all the other things that they put off in their life come rushing back in. And then they got to deal with that. And then they get upset because they're not working on their comic. And then what happens? The next week, they put everything else on hold and they put 25 hours of work into the comic. And that's a good way to get exhausted, to get fatigued, to get burned out. So what I want you to do is build a small, repeatable schedule. And I mean small, because the number of minutes doesn't matter. The repeatability does matter. So let's say that you can only, and again, these are pretend numbers. These are not numbers for you, right? But let's say that I decided for me that I could put an hour and a half into my comic every weekday and maybe 2 hours a day on the weekends, right? So an hour and a half times 5, that gives me 7.5, plus 2 2-hour spurts there gives me 11.5 hours a week that I could find repeatable. Okay. That's almost 12 hours a week. That's enough to produce a surprising amount of work. And if you can do that every week, week after week, and keep it consistent and repeatable, you can, at the end of the year, even though you're just putting a little bit of time in, okay? And let's say it's not an hour and a half, maybe it's just an hour. Doesn't matter, because all of this accumulates when you can repeat it week after week. And that's where the prize is. It isn't about getting it done today or this week or this month. It's about what you have to look back on after a year or after 2 years. So my first thought to you is consistency. I want you to find something, even if it's a very small amount of time, but the important thing is that you can do it consistently. What do you think about that?
This is great advice. And I would add, I would change nothing, but I would add some small things onto this, which is along with consistency. And Brad also kind of said this as well. I would lean towards starting small. Yeah. Because it is so much easier to expand as you get more and more confident with the time that you're allotting this. And then it is psychologically to retract time that you had given it and now have to claw it back for this or that in your life. So To Brad's point, is like consistency is big. Schedule the time out when you can across the week, and also maybe limit it to one of whatever one unit is at first. Just do a couple of weeks of just one unit. Does that mean one page? Does that mean one comic? Does that mean one writing session? Yes, probably.
Yeah.
But whatever it is for you, keep it small at first and grow it as you get more confident at it. And by the way, it'll grow naturally as you get more into the project. You'll find the excitement will be like, I can squeeze in another hour here. I can do another half an hour there. That'll be great. And then the second thing that I was going to add on to Brad's excellent point was let your writing fill the gaps in your life in such a way that when you do have a significant amount of time available to you, like let's say on Saturdays, you always know Saturdays between 2 and 4, for whatever reason in your life, that you're free then. And that's a perfect time to sit down and draw. Don't let it happen where 2 to 4 o'clock on Saturday arrives and you haven't written anything, because then you're like, now you have to write? No.
Yeah.
Writing should be done the half an hour once a night, every night on the couch, or when you're commuting home from work, or God forbid on the company's dime.
Yeah.
Remember, not doing it electronically, doing it on a pad of paper with a pen.
Don't get tracked.
Don't get tracked. But, oh, hey, that meeting hasn't started yet? Great. While you're waiting for everybody to filter into the room, maybe work on your comic for 10 minutes on your notepad. And then when someone leans over and says, what are you working on? You're like, oh, I'm preparing that report for next week. That's what I'm working on with my inscrutable handwriting that no one else can read.
Exactly.
And so that's my add-on advice to Brad's excellent advice, which is start small and make sure in your work-life balance that the writing is filling the gap such that when you do have big time ready to go, you're ready to sit down and work, that's when your drawing is ready to go. And so the writing's already been done. Any thoughts on my thoughts there for Brad?
I 100%. I think those are wise words indeed, especially taking the time that nobody else wants, or that in-between time. Like I've said on the show,
time, yes.
I've said so many times, I especially when my kids were young, I would get up before anybody in the house woke up and brew a pot of coffee and do some writing, right? Because those were the hours that nobody else wanted. Right. And so I had control of those a little bit. But beyond that, I would also recommend breaking this up into small steps so that you can have small victories. Right. In other words, when you get home, let's say after a full day, 9 to 5, it's a little bit hard to do a full comic. So just make your goal for that night to be to write like one punchline, one joke if you're doing humor, or like a half a page of dialogue if you're doing another type of writing that isn't necessarily humorous and is more dialogue heavy, or maybe sketch or thumbnail one page, or to ink a half a page. You see where I'm going here? Small victories, not trying to get an entire comic page done, but tonight my small victory is going to be this. Right. And that builds momentum. That makes it feel like you're going forward. And sometimes it's very important to feel like you're going forward. Otherwise, you get frustrated. And that's where people later on, I hear this in comics consultations every now and again. I need you to help get me motivated. And I think that's where a lot of motivation problems happen, is because you've tried to do everything in one swing, and you're not giving yourself those small victories. And along those lines, you need to take care of the whole package. In other words, we just got done talking about, work-life balance, and we've been talking a lot about work. But don't forget, your life needs to be in there too. And all we've talked about on the other side of that equation has been your 9 to 5 job. Don't forget, you have a life to live. You've got, if you've got kids, certainly you need to be there for your kids. And by the way, it's good to be there for your kids. That's something that will charge your creative batteries like nobody's business. Be there for your parents, perhaps, who might need a little bit more help as they're getting older. Be there for your life partner, or be available to find a life partner. We had a show about that not too long ago. And take care of yourself. That means Dave, it means getting a full 8 hours of sleep and not reading the news before going to bed. And also, Brad, it means getting the exercise, even though that treadmill is still broken. And it means taking a night off every now and again when you need it. All of that stuff, all that life stuff, relationships, your health, getting a night's sleep, all of that is as important for a comics career as learning how to letter or learning how to ink. All of getting a solid hours of exercise and getting that heart beat going and all of that good stuff, and maybe and saying, oh, I'm gonna back off of that dessert tonight. I'm gonna give that a break tonight. I'm gonna have dessert maybe tomorrow, but tonight I'm gonna back off. All of that is as important as anything else that we ever talk about on ComicLab.
And as Brad was saying at the beginning, as you start with consistency and as you start small, I would also say that at this point in your career is not the time to compare how you're doing with how other cartoonists are doing.
Yes.
Because not only is comparison the theft of joy, comparison is the theft of creativity too. When you're like, well, wait, how is this manga artist able to do 400 pages? And it's like, well, let me fast forward you 10 years when they're committed because they had a complete breakdown or dead. I mean, frankly, the suicide
those guys die young.
I know. And so what I'm getting at there is that don't necessarily compare your output to others when you are trying to live a balanced life between your 40-hour-a-week job, your life at home, your health, your creativity, your family, your friends, and your comics. Don't compare that to a manga artist that keeps a separate apartment in downtown Tokyo away from their spouse, hasn't seen their kids in 3 years, and is frankly having heart palpitations because they work so damn much. Like, that's not something that's good for you in this stage of your career to compare your output to others. So Brad's advice of consistency, starting small, keeping to a schedule, and finding time for the other things in your life is all great advice. Yeah.
And I'm just going to put a bow on that with this thought, along with what Dave just got done saying, because this dovetails perfectly. Don't shoot for perfect. Finished is better than perfect. I'll take something finished that has a few flaws than something that's perfect that I still haven't put out into the world yet. Right. You can build an audience with something that's finished, even if it's got some flaws. You can't build something if you're constantly polishing this thing and you've never put it out, right?
What's that phrase, Brad? Polishing the doorknob doesn't open the door?
Yes. Oh, my God. I don't know whether you and I just saw that somewhere. I just remember seeing that like recently. Yeah.
I literally saw that for the first time yesterday, and I was like, polishing the doorknob doesn't open the door.
I don't know where we saw that. We both saw it in the same place. But anyway, I love that thought. But yeah, and overall, here's what I'm going to finish up with is focus on the long game. But and by the way, that's how back when I was good about exercising an hour a day. This is how I did it, and I got to the point where I was doing it for several years, where I just said I'm gonna work out for 20 minutes, just 20 minutes. Anybody can do 20 minutes. 20 minutes turned into 30. 30 turned into 45. 45 turned into an hour-long workout. But that accumulated over a long period of time. Okay. So what I want you to do is to have that same kind of thought process, is that these little, even if it's an hour a day, even if that's all you do is an hour a day, that accumulates like amazingly by the end of the year.
Yes.
If that's all you do and you're not able to push it beyond that. Right. And I'm saying, like, you should be very careful about expanding, especially in the beginning, because that's how you end up trying to put that 20 hours a week in all of a sudden again, right? If you just put an hour a day in, that accumulates marvelously. And it's like compound interest. Compound interest works against you with your credit cards. It works for you in comics, because that compounded time that you're spending on your comic pays huge dividends. So Focus on the long game. Doesn't matter if you don't have a whole page of comics by the end of this week. What matters is what happens by the end of the year or the end of even 2 years.
It's funny because I was talking, Brad, with a cartoonist that we both know. And I was saying, because they were struggling with like, I can't find the time, but I also don't have the energy, but this and that. And I said to them, just do one a week.
Yes.
You do one a week. That's 52 a year. In 3 years, you have a book you can publish, right?
Yep.
In 3 years. And they're like, yeah, but that's 3 years from now. and then, so it like went the other way, like that's taking too long. And my thought was, here's what's going to happen if you don't do it this way. 3 years are going to go anyway.
Right.
They're still going to pass.
Right.
They're still going to pass. And then you're going to be like, I don't have a book at the end of this 3 years. Just do one a week. You know what I mean? And like 3 years from now, you have a book.
Just think about how happy he'd be today if he would have started that 3 years ago.
Yes, exactly. And listen, I'm the same way. I'm like, I have trouble both scheduling wise and emotionally getting myself to the gym. So I've just set myself the goal of once a week. I just go lift weights once a week.
Just once a week.
I do puppy walks and stuff in the meantime, but I just go lift weights once a week. And even once a week, which we all know is not quite enough for lifting weights. Yeah. But even once a week, Brad, after 5-6 weeks now, I can, every time I like touch my arm, I'm like, oh, all right. There it is. Getting a little firm there. There's the old magic coming back. And so like, and what's happened is, much like Brad said at the beginning of this, is that every once in a while I'll be like, I could do a second one this week.
Hell yeah.
You know, and so anyway, long story short, I think you have heard from both Brad and I that there is a possibility for a work-life balance that both gets the work done on a timeline that's reasonable. Yeah. Keeps your emotional balance healthy, keeps your physical wellness there, keeps your social life active, and gets you both working 40 hours a week and maybe doing somewhere between 5 and 15 hours of comics a week. Yeah. Very, very doable. All right, Brad. Well, we've got a fun update for everybody at the middle of the show here. The NCS conference, the Reuben Awards weekend, the tickets are now going on sale for August 6th through 8th in Columbus, Ohio, my friend.
Absolutely. This is going to be the 80th Reuben Awards and NCS conference. And we've kind of shared a little bit about this in the ComicLab newsletter. But we've seen some advanced looks at what this show is going to entail. And our jaw dropped. It was literally, they were able to put together everything that Dave and I have always said we wanted to see in a show like this. They've got it. They like rounded all the bases.
It's like one of the things that Brad and I have been pushing for years now is we were whenever we get a chance to talk with our friends that do all the actual work at the NCS, we're like, boy, as many panels where it's news you can use or actionable advice in the panels, that would be great. And so for this year, there is 5 hours of professional development sessions for the conference. And so we're not going to tip our hat too much, but we've got both Jim Davis is going to be doing a talk, Kathy Geiswit's going to be doing a talk, 2 handsome pals that you might know from A Little Something Special are going to be giving a talk. We've got lawyers giving a talk. We've got different cartoonists giving talks over the course of those 5 hours of professional development. It's going to be awesome.
They've even got, and this is a great idea, they've got their version of TED Talks. They're calling them Toon Talks. But the idea is they get a group of people, I don't know how many, but each one talks for like 10 minutes on one topic that they've got a deep, deep catalog knowledge of. But it's 10 minutes. So it's, in other words, it's not where we've all been to, and not necessarily the NCS, but I've been to comic conventions where I went to a panel discussion, for example, where the person clearly just kind of droned on and on. These are bite-sized 10 minutes, boom, and done, and then off to the next topic. All of this stuff, that not only have they put together kind of the perfect NCS week of conference type stuff, but they make it so easy for people who are members, non-members, people who aren't cartoonists at all and just want to buy tickets just to the talks. They make it so easy for each one of those groups. We're just overjoyed at what they put together for this year.
I know. I'm so excited. And like, wait, now let's clarify this because this was new to me. I found out. I thought you had to be a member to attend the Rubin Weekend, but if we're finding out that you don't have to be a member. You can just pay to go to the Rubens. And like Brad said, there's two different ways you can do it. You can either go to everything, including the award show and the conference sessions, or you can just do a sessions only sign up, which is cheaper. So if you are in the Midwest area around Columbus, Ohio, and want to see the Billy Ireland Museum and want to see the sessions, you could just do that. Or you could do the whole kit and caboodle, which is the meals, the networking, the award show, all that. But this year, what's really fun is another thing that we have been quietly rooting for is the idea of a public-facing event. And so this year, at the conclusion of the Rubin Weekend, there's going to be a big public signing where you can sign and sell your books and sort of underwrite your trip to Columbus, Ohio, which is great.
We've been saying this for cartoonists for years, that it would be really helpful if they had one extra day where we can set up a table, do a signing, sell a few books, and make some of the money back that we just got done spending. Because this, the costs can pile up a little bit, right? And this was something that we said, hey, this would be, Dave has been pulling for this, I know, for years and years as a member of the NCS. And this year they're doing it. So there's going to be a special event hosted at the Billy Ireland Cartoon Library. And cartoonists are going to be able to set up a table, comic convention style, sell their books, do signings, and also as great as it is to sit and talk to other cartoonists. And that's really the main reason I like going to these. It's also nice to take a day and say, hey, I'm also going to get a chance to talk to some of the people who read my comic and who have come out to this show to see me, especially since I don't do comic conventions anymore. So this is like one of the rare chances to get out, for me to get out and talk to people. Dave, I know, has cut way back a lot of us. I guarantee you, if you're quote unquote a civilian, this is a show you ought to be looking at as well, because you're going to get a chance to see an awful lot of people who you might not get a chance to see on a regular basis.
And in fun news, like you and I haven't done a Midwest signing in decades. Yeah. So like this is going to be a fun way to do sort of regional outreach in a way that we haven't done before. But listen, no one is paying us to do this. Brad and I just love the direction the NCS is going in. And like we're super excited for this 80th anniversary show. I mean, we kind of buried the lead, too, is that this is going to be taking place at the Billy Ireland Museum, which is, honest to God, the world-class museum for American, Canadian, global comics. They're going to have the big new Chris Ware show this year. It's going to be redone, I think, Brad.
That's what I was just going to say, is that they did a whole redesign of the museum. So even if you've been there in the past, you haven't been there. It's a whole different place now. And they've been talking about the stuff that they wanted to do for a while. They finally got a chance to really pull out all the stops. So it's a brand new museum even. It's just, if you're not a member and you've been on the fence, this is the time to take the leap and become a member. If it's not a good fit for you, you can still come and join us. They've got ticket options for you. And if you're not a cartoonist and you're not, but you'd love to come and see some of these talks and hear some of your favorite comics artists talk about what they're passionate about, there's an option for you as well. And the reason that we made this an update is because now at the National Cartoonist Society website, tickets just went on sale. And if you go to National Cartoonists, that's National Cartoonists, plural.com, you can go over and they will have information on how you can buy tickets. Don't worry, I got you covered. I'll put that link in the show notes as well. But if you go to nationalcartoonists.com, you can right now get your tickets and join Dave and I in Columbus, Ohio, August 6th through the 8th. Well, listen, Dave, we've got a question that comes in from a ComicLab backer over there at patreon.com/ComicLab who says, you've extolled the virtue of making short comics to hone writing and drawing skills. I really like that idea, and I've made a few short comics in the past few years. I'm working on one right now that I especially think isn't too shabby. Making them has taught me a lot, and I know the ultimate goal is to prepare myself for a longer comic project, but is there a way to make some money from the short comics in the interim? I spent a lot of time on them, and it'd be nice to recoup some of that effort, but I'm not sure what the best way to do it would be. I'm all right on the art side of things, but I'm still learning the business side, so your advice is always fantastic to hear. So, Dave, let's give this person some advice. They've taken our advice, because we've said, don't try to do that 200-page epic right off the bat. Do some short comics. They've taken us up on it. They've got, I'm seeing there a few short comics, including one that they really feel strongly about. But they'd like to get a little something out of it in the meantime. What can we give this person in terms of some thoughts?
Why did you make that a little skeevy towards the end there? They'd like to get a little something on the side.
Little something. They want to get a little something for the effort.
So with short comics, I don't know that I have a good solution for this. I don't know that I can think of off the top of my head a good. Can you, Brad? Can you think of a way for short comics to be monetized?
I could think of probably about a half a dozen different ways that I would do this.
Oh, to hell with you. Oh, to hell with you, Brad. All right, gang, here's where we learn that Brad Geiger is a better human being. No, okay, actually, this is good because there's a lot of ways I can learn from Brad, and this is one of them. Brad is very good about being like, we can monetize this, and I'm like, I'm going to sit and listen to Uncle Brad on this one.
Well, that's because, and you're going to find out very, very closely that I'm broadening what it means to monetize a little bit. Okay. So every one of these things that I'm going to think of is stuff that you probably are already doing. So let's take the first one, cross it off the list. You go to drivethroughcomics.com and you get an account and you put your comic up there for sale, and you've crossed that off your list. Maybe it's
okay. Yep. Well, I love that idea, but I want to pause you right there. How much would you price a short comic on Drive-Thru Comics? Is that $1 or $2, $3? What's the minimum?
Yeah, I would do $1, maybe $2, but because these days $2 isn't much. There's not much you can get for $2. I would also, depending on the platform, experiment with a pay what you want situation. Mm-hmm. I haven't done that in a long time, but back when I used to do it, I always used to get surprised at what people would voluntarily pay.
Does Drive-Thru do a Costco sampler where if there's a 15-page comic, you can read the first 10 and then right as the cliffhanger, then you could pay to get the last 5?
They do that? You can set a certain number of preview pages, so you can bake that into the presentation when they go and look at it on the site.
Okay, then I super co-sign with Brad. So now that and that was number one.
Yeah,
was
and that's just straight up monetization, right?
Yep.
But let's try, and let's take off some of the other ones too, that you might not do it right away, but this is how you can justify that time that you're spending on it.
Okay.
Bonus content for your next Kickstarter. Boom, done. Or something that you add, whether it's a digital bonus or added pages to the book, right? You got bonus content for you to use anyway. As long as we're doing that, once you get down the line and you're ready to start a Patreon, remember, you don't want to start too early, but when you're ready to start a Patreon, you've got Patreon exclusives ready to go. The one thing that you need when you finally get ready to monetize is an exclusive. You're building your exclusives right now. So yet again, it's not monetizing right now, but you can see the value out of what you're doing. And I think that's going to help this person know that they've got value. While you're over there in Patreon, remember, it's always nice to have a free gift when new people sign up to your Patreon.
Yep, that's true.
You've got a free gift, right?
Brad is so smart. Keep going. Yes.
Let's take and remember that this person said, I've got a number of small comics, right? Okay, fantastic. Now you put those out one at a time on a digital platform like Drive-Thru Comics. You got all 5 of them, all 6 of them. Great. Now group them all up into one big one. And now you've got another thing that you can charge a little bit more for because it's a higher page count. While you're at it, hey, screw that. Maybe I want to try my first Kickstarter. Now, if you've got 6 short comics, you might have enough right there for your first small Kickstarter, a very limited run. You keep the costs low. You get to learn how a Kickstarter works, and you get a little money in the process. And it's all your work. And it doesn't matter whether they're all different topics. These are all stories by you. And so you put them all between the same covers and you offer them as maybe a Kickstarter. All of that behind the scenes, you can build that into things.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh, and going back to that, let's not forget the big one. And that is you're going to use these comics in a number of different ways to build an audience online. If you haven't already, you can let them put them out in short bursts on Blue Sky. You should have your eye on Reddit right now, especially if you're doing longer form storytelling. It's a very good place to make that happen. And of course, as you're doing all of that, you can be pointing to the e-comic and other places or any of the other things that you want to direct traffic to. There's a lot. Here's my point. There's a lot of different ways you can use this. It's just kind of A, opening yourself up to it, and B, reminding yourself that we cartoonists make huge mistakes when we assume that people are paying attention. So you're going to reuse that. You're going to repackage that. You're going to re-identify it. And you have all kinds of value ready to go. And this is the same thing as the previous question asker, Dave. And that is realizing what this becomes as it accumulates, right?
Right.
So it doesn't feel great that you're not monetizing it right now. And by the way, your best shot at right now monetizing is a $2 e-comic that's not going to sell very much, right? But over the long term, this has tremendous value. And that's where you've got to keep your eye. Do you agree? That's where you got to keep your sights.
Not only do I agree, I just want to point out for the record that when this question was asked, hey, Brad and Dave, how do I monetize my short comic?
Yeah.
Dave Kellett said, there's no way to do it. Nothing can be done. You are screwed, glued, and tattooed, to quote Brad Guigar from a week ago or 2 weeks ago. And then Brad Guigar sits down, starts rubbing his hands together and goes, all right, get out a pen because I've got 14 ways you can monetize. And so I want everybody just to remember that your old pal Brad Guigar had 48 solutions to you when Dave Kellett had bupkis. I had nothing. I had nothing in the holster for that one, Brad.
You know why? I'll tell you why. Because you're too close to it. You're in other words, you are immersed in every one of those things I've said is stuff that you're doing, right? But you're immersed in it. It's almost like can't see the forest for the trees type of thing. If you were to step back, you'd see that all this stuff is just stuff that you don't even think about doing anymore because you've been doing it for so long, right?
You're right. You're right. But also, I just want to say, again, my friend Brad Guigar just has more access to the punch dimension than I have. And he's coming out here with so much concussive force.
I wouldn't want mine to come out my eyes. And I'm not going to get creepy.
Listen, don't make the joke. We know where you're going to go with this, with your evil.
I would want mine to come out my ear. Because then when somebody says, I'll blow it out your ear, you've got the ultimate comeback.
I see that. I always loved that about every once in a while, the X-Men would have some young mutant that Xavier was taking in, whose mutation was useless, absolutely useless. They have Cyclops' power, but it shoots out only their left nostril, right? And I always appreciated that from a writing standpoint. Is that if it is truly a mutation, it's gonna manifest in weird ways that are not always useful. And so, like Cypher, that X-Men that could his mutant power was to translate languages. Right. Great, you work for the UN, but you're not going to do great fighting crime. You're kind of useless to the X-Men.
Yeah. Well, I think I wonder about this sometimes, whether they stole it a little bit from the Legion of superheroes over at DC Comics, because Legion did that too, because they had in the Legion of superheroes some very useless superheroes, like Bouncing Boy, who could inflate himself and bounce around. That was not very useful. There was, and my all-time favorite, Matter Eater Lad. His superpower?
Matter Eater Lad?
Matter Eater Lad. He could eat any kind of matter.
That sounds like the joke from 30 Rock of Rural Juror, just like the shittiest name.
A Rural Juror,
Matter Eater Lad.
Or the Arrested Development Bob Loblaw's Law Blog.
It's also like everybody that was a member of the Great Lakes Avenger, like Flatman and all those guys, just the worst superpowers. Yeah. So anyway, I appreciated that. But like, spend another minute, Stan Lee, before you go like, all right, fantastic. He accesses the concussive force of another dimension. That's great. Although, wait, did Stan write the X-Men, early X-Men? I don't remember.
I think Stan wrote early. I think Stan wrote the early everything. But yeah, I think he wrote early X-Men.
Did he? Okay.
Well, the question is, so what does Stan do later on down the road when it's time to turn the page and to go into another thing? And as life would have it, we've got a question about turning the page. This one comes in from one of our Patreon backers, and it goes like this. This one is for Dave. With the end of Drive looming, and with it accounting for a good chunk of your income, how are you planning to move that audience to a new project? Will you be launching something in the months coming up? Like before Drive ends, are you going to launch something so you can take advantage of that Drive audience and just move them to the new thing? Will you move into the sequel series you've hinted at? How do you prepare for the end and what comes next?
Excelsior! Well, when you're done with the X-Men, what you do is you create a comic called Stripperella. She's a stripper that fights crime. The fact that he did Stripperella is amazing to me. But
and even I cringed at that, and it's hard to make me turn up my nose at anything.
Stripperella was Stan Lee's next project. Anyway, so yeah, by the way, let's not go too far without complimenting you on that fantastic transition. That was baby smooth.
That's my mutant superpowers. I'm the king of transitions.
So I love this question. This is asking about the end of Drive and will I be launching something in the months before I start Drive or Drive ends? Will I move into a sequel series? How do I prepare for the end and what comes next? This is a great question because I am probably 2.5 to 3 years, maybe 3.5 years from the end of Drive. Mm-hmm. And so, because I've got to finish Act 5 and then there's going to be Act 6 and Act 6 will be the end of the story. And so maybe 4 years, but we're considering that it's, well, no, I'm just considering that we're at year 15 of the story, 17 of the story. That's not that far in the grand arc of things. So this is a fair question. It's also just an interesting question of how do you transition?
Yeah.
Because like, for example, I don't know that Jeff Smith was ready for Bone to be over in the sense that having the next project queued up, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think there is wisdom in starting a project before the current one ends. So 6 months to 12 months before Drive ends, I do think I would like to start another project. And I have one in mind, but I've learned from both my own personal experience and talking to a billion other cartoonists that it's not great to talk about what that project is because that steals the thunder.
Yeah.
I mean, me talking about the children's book and me talking about the kaiju book that I want to write, that has 100% stolen the thunder from working on those. So I've learned that I'm not going to talk about this third one that I'm thinking about. But I also, do have a potential sequel to Drive that unfortunately, Brad, is longer than Drive would be. Like, I'd be working on it for the rest of my GD natural life.
Oh, my gosh.
It's going to be a long story.
In the Drive universe, as it were?
Yeah. Oh. It's a couple years to a couple decades on from when Drive ends.
Mm-hmm.
and certain characters will have become emperor by that point, and other characters will have moved from captain to admiral. And it's a little bit how like they went back to Star Trek and everybody was an admiral. Remember that? Like, oh, Spock, you're a captain. Oh, Chekhov, you're a captain. Like everybody was a captain at one point. Yeah, everybody became a captain. So I don't want to have that problem, but it will be a few years on, so it does imply a little bit of moving up in the ranks. Anyway, so that's a possibility. But there is also the question of like a sizable chunk of my income will be removed, Brad. And I'm sort of curious what your thoughts about that. Do you think that that is something that is preparable in terms of like, how could I prepare for X amount of dollars no longer appearing in my life?
Well, no, I don't think that is. I think that's a leap of faith that you'd have to take when it comes to that point. And I think that's going to be difficult. In other words, I can see where it's very attractive to work on a sequel because you know this thing has an existing audience and you know that you're going to be able to bring a large percent of them along to the next thing, even though you've done a time skip, even though it's a different story. There's a lot of familiarity. If you were to just stop that and start something new, that's not a insurmountable challenge. But I don't see how you prepare for that either. I mean, it's just, yes, you can say, yeah, it's me. It's the same person doing it, same sense of humor, same drawing. But it's not the same, you know. And so it's a leap. It's more of a leap of faith. And I think it's a leap of faith that in some cases is worth taking. It's worth that creative payoff down the road. But how do you prepare for it? I don't know how you would prepare for it.
Yeah, well, I do know that I don't want to stop. So that's one. We can take that one off. I want to keep creating. In fact, I want to keep cartooning until my deathbed. Brad and I have talked about this on the show. I don't want to retire. I don't know that that's healthy for me. It's not for everybody, but it's for me. I don't know that retirement would be healthy. I think I would turn into that creature at the end of I Have No Mouth, But I Must Scream story. Is that I would just be this slug in life. And so that's not a possibility. But let me give you a couple strategies that I have thought about, because this is maybe getting at the question asker's question, which is if I'm finishing up Drive, it's at the peak of my ability to reach out to an audience, Brad, right? Like they're all tuning in for the last 6 months of Drive. How's the story going to end, right? Yeah. That is the time to capture them in a way that if I end Drive and then start the next story a year or 2 years later, I have lost 40 to 70% of that readership just out the door. They're just gone. I will never get them back, right? Yeah. So I either have to do a couple of things. I either have to start another story while Drive is wrapping up, right? That's number one. Or I have to immediately have the sequel ready to start right as Drive is ending, so no one transitions away. Yeah. Or I have to find a way of telling them in a way that most people would be willing to do, which is not always the case. Say, hey, just put your name down on this mailing list such that 6 months from now, when I do have the next project, I will just send you an email. It's not ready yet, but here, I just want to capture your email. But you'll have to know going into that, you will A, not capture 100% of the people, and then B, a percentage of those people will change their emails in the intervening 6 months. It just happens. Life happens, you know? Yeah. So don't you agree, Brad, that there's a capturing moment that has to happen either with another title, an immediate follow-up series of Drive, or somehow capturing their emails, or else I've lost a huge percentage of those people.
Well, that's kind of what I did when I moved from Greystone Inn to Evil Inc. I did a pre-social media, pre-newsletter version of that. In other words, Greystone Inn basically handed off to Evil Inc. storyline. It was more of a kind of Evil Inc. is kind of a sequel, as it were, or a spinoff from Greystone Inn. But what I did was when Greystone Inn finally officially ended and Evil Inc. began, I continued to update Evil Inc. on the Greystone Inn website. Right. For about another 6 months or so. because people were used to coming to the Greystone Inn site. So my question to you would be, would you consider, let's say that you don't do the sequel to Drive. Let's make this a real thought experiment. Let's say that the next thing is completely different. For lack of a better example, Kaiju and Cowboys, right?
Right.
Completely different concept. Would you consider updating the Kaiju comic on the Drive site for the next 6 months and putting it out through the Drive email newsletter?
Yeah. The short answer is yeah.
Yeah.
And
it works for Greystone Inn.
The proof in the pudding is that you did it for Greystone Inn and I did it for Drive with Sheldon.
Yeah.
Sheldon was, for those that remember, before it even had a title, it was a Saturday sci-fi storyline.
Yeah.
It was the SSSS or whatever I called it, Saturday's. And so, yeah, it's a great way to use the leverage of an existing audience to translate them over to the next thing. I also would say, Brad, that I can see a world, though, even though that I have a pretty exciting follow-up storyline for Drive, I could see a world 4 years from now where I'm like, you know what? That was 21 years of my life. That's enough of that.
Yeah.
And much like Jeff Smith was like, that's enough bone. I'm going to put that aside. Why are you smiling about that? Because I keep bringing up.
That's enough bone is a funny sentence. I'm sorry.
Things that have never been said in Brad Geiger's life. That's enough bone. But no, you know what I mean? Like, you, as much as you love a thing, I can see a world where emotionally 4 years from now, I'm like, all right, well, that was enough of that.
That was enough.
And like, for example, I can see a world where the next project that I do is actually with another cartoonist.
Really?
I've done enough stuff now solo where I'll be honest, I have thought a lot about, I have no concept, but I've thought a lot that I would love to do something with Brad someday. We've kind of bandied about like, hey, we could do single panel comics together. I love the idea that I write one, Brad draws it, Brad writes one, I draw it. Something about that seems fun to me. It's kind of how, and Brad laughs at me every time I bring them up, but there was a Russian trio named Kukrinitsky in 1930s, 1940s Soviet Union that worked together like that. And I always thought like that was a fun way to make comics, is that like you were reliant and trusting on your partner to provide you material that you thought was worth cartooning and vice versa. And I think there's something cool about that. But also, as everyone has seen on Writer's Room, I get a real jolt of doing idea creation with Brad. It's just fun. It just seems better. I see why TV writers' rooms work, because there's this energy that you don't get by yourself. So there's that. Let me ask you this, Brad. So in the past, you have said that you foresaw a world where Evil Inc. was done and you might go on and do your Space Pirates comic, or you might go on and do this or that comic. Where are you emotionally right now? Do you see an end date for Evil Inc. now?
I kind of don't. I kind of see Evil Inc. being my main thing, and I might do any number of projects to the side. In fact, I've been able to do a number of different things, but I feel so at home in the Evil Inc. universe. It allows me to do all of the kind of storytelling that I want to do. I think at a certain point, I'm going to have to make a decision. For example, I've said before, when finally the main couple, Captain Heroic and Miss Match, when they finally solidify their relationship, I've got to make a decision, because that's kind of where the original Evil Inc. comic strip started out. And when I rebooted it, I rebooted it specifically because I said I started that in the middle. Right. It should have been
sort of the original sin of that, that pitch.
It really was. I started with them being an established couple with a kid, no less. And a lot of the great storytelling is how that relationship started. Right. When it comes full circle, I've got to make a decision. And that decision could take any number of shapes. I could literally move the focus. Right now, the focus is in a Philadelphia-inspired city called Fairmount City. I could move it to another city with a whole new group of people, knowing that I could bring in cameos from the original Evil Inc. anytime. Bring over, just like I did for Greystone, Lightning Lady was a Greystone Inn character, and Evil Inc. started with her as a jumping off point. The first strip is her interviewing for a job. I could do the same thing. I could send Desdemona out to Akron, and she starts there and do a whole new thing. Or I could just, there's a number of things I could do, including if it seems right, stopping Evil Inc. entirely and going to something else. But of the options that I have, I don't see me stopping Evil Inc. anytime soon. I like that concept. It's really in my wheelhouse. I've gotten to the point where I'm very comfortable writing it and comfortable, not in a, oh, this is easy, but I know what I have to do and I get results that are really good. And that was not always the case. Looking back, that was not always the case. Sometimes I was taking big swings and misses. Still, I have to make sure that I'm not too much in my head when I write, but I'm so familiar with it that I know how to get good results finally. And it'd be very scary for me to leave that sweet spot. I never say no, but if I were to put money on it right now, I'd say that you're going to see me doing Evil Inc. at age 85. They're going to be a lot more squiggly drawings, but I think that's going to be my central tent post. And there may be any number of other things, but I think it's going to be Evil Inc. I really do.
At 85, that's great.
Yeah.
So there'll be more storylines about erectile dysfunction, but but no, how great! Because longtime listeners of the show will remember not too many years ago, maybe 4 years ago, Brad was saying like, "Oh yeah, I can see the wrapping up endpoint of Evil Inc." And by the way, both of this, my reaction to what I do after Drive and Brad's reaction to what potentially do or not do after Evil Inc. Both of those are variables and will change in time. And I think we both allow a certain amount of grace for how we can change our attitudes about that. The one thing I noticed that when I think about what comes after Drive, my first thought doesn't tend to be money. And I think this is helpful for people listening, is that my first thought tends to be what makes me excited, what gets me passionate about doing it. Because I know, and Brad will probably relate to this, I know I can spin up the money if there's enough love there. You know what I mean? Like, it's really hard to spin up the money if I'm like, I'm doing a project and it's not that fun and I don't care and they don't care. But if I'm having fun with it, I'll find a way, nights, weekends on and find a way to make money on it in the way that Brad came up with 12 ideas super quick on how to make money off of a short form comic. Yeah. If I love it and if there's passion and enjoyment behind it, I'll put in the energy to figure out a way to make a living from it, in time. And so I think that's a version of what we always say is like, first do a good comic. And then once you do a good comic, then I probably should be more worried about like, how do I pay best salary 4 years from now when Drive is over? I probably should, but I'll figure that out once the next project is in hand and I'm doing it. That's funny. I hadn't thought about that until I said it out loud. How will I pay best salary, Brad?
I mean, but you're in such you've paid your dues to the extent that you have options. In other words, yes, Drive will be over, but you know darn well that in the same way we've seen other creators do this, now, if you need a little something to even out the bumps, you've got the Drive Omnibus edition. Right. Or you've got the Drive box set, or you've got all of the Anatomy of Animals. Featuring
3 new short stories or something.
Or you take the Anatomy series and make that a box set. In other words, in the same way we were suggesting our first question asker to repackage, recycle, reuse, all of those things. When you're in that interim period, because you've been doing work all along, you've got a whole huge archive that you can reach into, repackage, and release in a new form or a new format. And that gives you a lot of wiggle room when it comes to that interim between the end of Drive and the beginning of the new thing.
And, it's actually funny that you would mention repackaging the Anatomy books because they have kind of shown me that I'm not wedded to Sheldon and Drive as the only things that I can do. You know, like I can come up with entirely new formats and make them work. And I kind of suspect, and again, I don't know why this is the case. I kind of suspect that Brad and I will find some project to work on at some point in the next decade together. I don't know what that is yet, but I just think it'd be fun. I don't know. Like I've had enough of Dave Kellett by myself. I'd like to see what Brad and Dave or Brad and another person could do.
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of feel like the only way I'm ever going to do kaijus and cowboys is if I just hire somebody to draw it.
Yeah.
So, Tony Cliff, if you're listening, I've got a job for you whenever you're ready.
I was going to say, that is not a Brad Guigar project. I think that's a project for a different artist.
That's a Carl Kroschel, if I can ever talk Carl into it, or Tony Cliff, if I can ever talk Tony into it. I would love to have them do it. But I don't know. I think it'd be fun, too, to finally, I've put it off for years to finally do like a backup story for Marvel or DC. I think that'd be fun in my late 50s or 60s to write a short story for them. Anyway, but thank you for the question, because it's fun to think about. And this is sort of a good problem to have, where I was able to do a comic title successfully for 17 years and now have to think about how to wrap it up. Kind of a rare thing in comics, you know, Brad?
Yeah, no, 100%.
Not something you hear about often. Like when you think about somebody wrapping up a comic, who besides Jeff Smith do you think of?
Oh, gosh.
That I could look to as a role model?
That's a really good question. So far, the main names that come to mind are from syndicated newspaper comics, right? Bill Watterson, Burke Breathed to an extent. We've had
Gary Larson,
Lynn Johnston, stuff like that, where Lynn is a great example. Bringing that sweeping story to a conclusion, Kathy Geiswhite, et cetera. Those are the names that are coming to mind for me in terms of people that have brought big, although there have been others from the world of webcomics too. For some reason, I'm just not bringing those up. But I think there's some value to that, and also knowing that creativity is eternal. You can bring Drive to an end. Doesn't mean that you can never work on Drive again. You know, there's always side stories, sequels, you know, there's spinoffs. There's a lot of stuff that can happen after that end.
And just to stay on Jeff Smith for a minute, I think even though he said he was done, I think, didn't he a few years ago do something else with it?
Yeah.
And then, even like TV shows, you had Scrubs come back 20 years later or whatever it was after it last aired. So, you're right. Spinoffs and follow-ups and prequels and all sorts of things are possible. But God, it's been a fun run. I haven't really enjoyed doing that story. Yeah. And you're right. It has been helpful with Stripped and with After Stripped, talking to other cartoonists who ended their syndicated runs. Yeah. That has been helpful.
Yeah.
And so many of them said, I just knew it was time. I knew it was time to wrap it up when I talked to them. And Drive, by virtue of the fact that the story will literally tell me that it's time to wrap it up because there's nothing left to say, that will be my... That will be my way of knowing that it's time to wrap it up.
Well, I'm glad to hear that you still enjoy working with me, that you'd consider doing a comic with me, even after doing a podcast with me for all that time, because I do enjoy working with you. I think about it all the time. I think about it usually once a week when it's time for me to say that you've been listening to ComicLab, the show about making comics and making a living from comics.
Your hosts have been my delightful friend, Brad Guigar, the editor of webcomics.com, the creator forever of Evil Inc. at evilcomic.com, and the co-host of the fantastic new drawing show over at wrongwayshow.com.
And my friend Dave Kellett, the multi-talented co-director of the comics documentary Stripped, the cartoonist of Sheldon at sheldoncomics.com, and Drive at drivecomic.com, and another handsome co-host of the drawing show, along with our friend Kevin McShane at wrongwayshow.com.
And the ComicLab theme song is used with permission from Andy Creighton over at theworldrecord.net. And this episode was edited by the ever wonderful, ever whimsical. I forgot. I forgot. This episode was edited by the ever wonderful, ever whimsical Matt Woodard of Woodsong Productions over at www.woodsong.media.
If you love ComicLab, you can rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts, and you may hear your review featured on a future episode. And don't forget to give us a 5-star review on Spotify, where we are burning up the podcast charts.
And ComicLab is made possible by your support over at patreon.com/ComicLab. So I will go ahead and say that twice. Patreon.com/Hey Jack, what do you think about Punch Dimension? Does that sound good? Listen, I've had a few shots of whiskey. Don't put that into your factoring of how this sounds. Cyclops, he accesses the Punch Dimension. That's solid writing. That's not at all a 5-year-old boy writing something. It's just the nature of the phrase punch dimension just sounds so half-assed, like a 5-year-old boy's like, and then what he does, Brad, is when he opens his eyes, it accesses the punch dimension, and then he punches people with his eyes.
He's got eye punches.
He got the eye punches, and that's why it's called the punch dimension, Brad. Like, it's just sometimes comics writers, it's like, just do better. Punch dimension, really?
Just put a little thought into this.
Just another 10 minutes of pitching on what that could be called.
You know what? But I think that there was...
Meanwhile, Jack from the 60s is reaching forward in time going, fuck you, I'm working on 17 titles. I'm doing so much cocaine, you have no idea.
That was my point. We don't know if he ever did coke, but we do know that those guys put out an enormous amount of stuff, and they probably were going so fast they didn't have time to think.
Yeah. He's like, you know what? That's good enough. Literally, so many decisions where that's good enough. Yeah. Look, Brad, his name is Stilt, man. He walks on stilt. That's good enough. Done. We're moving on to the next one.
Squirrel Girl. It's going to be a girl who talks to squirrels. Done.
Yeah. They were retailing for what, 35 cents? They weren't. They knew they weren't making Shakespeare. And so, yes, there were occasional moments of genius, like with unlimited power comes, what was it? I forget the phrase.
With great power comes great responsibility.
Thank you. But so occasionally you'd have sparks of genius, but then you'd also have Stilt Man or Paste Pot Pete, you know?
But they expected it to be it's something that dissipates like immediately. It's what's the word? Translucent, or it
evaporates. It's like water on a hot pavement, you know.
And that I remember in the Mel Brooks documentary, him talking to Sid Caesar, trying to get Sid Caesar to do movies, and he said, "TV evaporates, right? You want to do movies, something to be solid." Little did he know that TV was going to become as omnipresent as movies, but they thought that comics were the same thing. It's just going to evaporate.
Yeah. That's a really good way to put it. Comics evaporate.
Yeah. Do you think that we're going to evaporate at some point? I mean, at some point, somebody stops paying for the server and we just evaporate.
I have always said somewhere in the 5 to 10 years after I die, no one's going to remember a GD thing that I've made. I think like they'll be reading Peanuts 100 years from now. They'll be reading Calvin and Hobbes 200 years from now. They won't be reading anything that I've made.
Why are they going to be reading those guys?
Because they're timeless. It's absolutely timeless.
No, because they're in print. And so are you. If they're going to be reading Calvin and Hobbes, a certain number of people are going to be reading Sheldon and Anatomy of Animals and Drive.
Yeah.
Because they're both in print.
Yeah. No, there's truth to that. Have you ever heard the phrase that you die twice?
Yeah.
First,
the wife told me that last night.